Welcome to part 2 of reviewing cook groups. I did a review on Notify, Invicta, Polar Chefs, and Strike Access. The reason why I am making a part 2 is because many of the critiques that I covered in part 1 has been swiftly addressed by each respective cook group owner, so it's only right to make a video update. By the way, this is the last time I'm going to be reviewing these groups. I know you guys are probably wanting some regularly scheduled programming, some live cops, maybe even some tutorials, some live streams, etc. However, this month has kind of just been dead, and that's why I kind of took a pause from that and just doing this for now. Also, drops are going to start to pick up in February, hopefully. One last final note before we get started. This video is not sponsored, so I would highly appreciate it if you guys liked, comment the video, or maybe disliked the video. Up to you. Just engage with the video in some way or form. And if you decide to join any of these, use the link in the description. Starting off with Invicta's improvements to beginner friendliness, they made a very in-depth video guide that is now located on the top of their server, talking about how to use their group, how to take advantage of their services and other things that they offer, very similar to the one that Polar Chefs and Notify offers. I'll be giving them a new revised beginner friendliness score from a 6 to a 9.5 out of 10. For the support category, I'm simply going to make a revision. I initially gave them a 6 out of 10 because they stopped replying to me after my third message, but I can see why now, so I'll bump this category up 1 point. My first impression of their guides were atrocious, but it looks like they made some huge improvements since the release of the video. Looking at their foot sites guide, it's now fairly complete and accurate. For their Shopify guide, they have video guides for 3 of the most common Shopify bots. The only thing that's missing is their Nike sneakers app guide, but this is something that I will also give them a pass because a lot of the Nike botting information is quite sensitive. But I have the impression that either the owner, Aiden, or any of their staff members should be able to help you out if that's something that you want to get into. So accuracy of information, 9 out of 10. Amount of information, 7 out of 10. For group buys, I'm actually really impressed with the bot group buys they're getting. They're getting some group buys with bots, which even some of the biggest groups don't get. But the overall number of group buys is still on the low end. But it's understandable. I can't really expect a group to 5x their number of group buys within a couple of weeks. However, this category is something that I can see them going to a 7, 8, or maybe even 9, considering the impressive names that they've been able to secure so far. For features, I need to make a minor correction. They do offer some homework bots, and they are also in the works of adding a Hibbit monitor. It's not there as of the time of recording, but it should be operational by the time this video is published. So their feature section will go from a 5 to a 6.5. This gets them to an average rating of 7.58. This sounds about right, with my personal overall rating going from a 5 to a 7.5. More importantly, my overall sentiment about the group has changed. Originally, I was like, okay, $20 a month, you get what you pay for, but ultimately it's just better not cheaping out on a group. My new sentiment in response to the changes that they've made is that Invicta is now actually quite a decent budget option in my opinion, and I wouldn't mind recommending it to people who are on a really tight budget. They are easily punching above their weight. Onto Polar Chefs. I'm gonna be honest, not really much room for improvement since they scored almost perfectly in every category. But after the publishing of my video, they did add a brick flips provider. The only thing they need now is a few names that they're missing in their group buys, which their owner let me know they are working on. Their revised score is 9.9 out of 10, but it could be 10 out of 10 real soon if they're able to secure the group buys and partnerships that I'm referring to. On to Notify. This was also a group that scored nearly perfectly for every category, but my biggest complaint was the slow response times as far as their chat support, and also the bare minimum nature of their responses. For response times, it looks like this was improved quite a bit, and as for the actual responses, I also saw a small improvement there as well. I'll be bumping the support score up 1 point from an 8 to a 9. By the way, I gave their group buy section some thought as well, and I've decided to change my mind. I had criticized them for the idea that Notify was too selective with which groups they are allowed to have group buys with them. But I did some thinking, and this approach is actually quite productive. And in fact, it is very similar to how I choose my companies that I partner up with for my personal brand. And that involves a process of vetting each and every company, who they decide to work with, and this process isn't entirely that easy. As a result, this minimizes the chances of members buying a product that won't perform optimally. Despite that rigorous vetting process, the sheer amount of group buys that they have is still very high, so I'm revising their group buy score from a 9 to a 10. My overall score from Notify goes from a 9.5 to a 9.7. Now onto Strike Access. This group has had some major changes since the publishing of the review video. First, the biggest change is their pricing. By the way, pricing wasn't a consideration when I made my ratings, but this price change is quite a big deal, and I'll explain why later. They lowered their price from $60 to $44.99 a month. Their original scores were already quite high in each category to begin with, but they've made further improvements, which now makes this a group that I can confidently recommend to people within the USA region moving forward. So let's talk about those improvements. First of all, their guides are now completed, comprehensive, accurate, and very organized. The sheer amount of information they offer now rivals the likes of Polar Chefs and Notify, which I'm extremely impressed with, especially considering that this was all done within a couple of weeks. Accuracy of information goes from a 9 to a 10 out of 10. Amount of information goes from an 8 to a 9.8 out of 10. Few changes that I would personally like to see is maybe add a few video guides, and another change that I would like to see is adding each website's anti-bot procedure onto their release channels. Once those changes are implemented, they would get a perfect score in the amounts category. But considering how much progress they've made with such a short amount of time, I feel like getting these implemented shouldn't be an issue at all. And once it is, this would be a perfect 10 out of 10, but for now, these are the scores for those categories. Now, as a byproduct of these guides being very well done, I will also bump their beginner friendliness score by 1 point. By the way, for the support category, I do need to make a slight revision. They do offer Q&A sessions before important drops. In the original video, I outright said they don't offer this, so the support category gets bumped up to half a point to 8.5. For group buys, this is the category where they scored the lowest in, but they've recently secured 9 partnerships with some incredible bot companies, so I'll bump up the score from a 7 to a 9. Now let's go over some features. They added some stocks and options, which are nice to have, but most importantly, their recent price change will positively affect the score of their features. As I mentioned in the previous video, their biggest selling point is the high success rate for their slots. This is the highest I've seen out of any of the groups that I've ever been a part of, and ultimately you can cop a bunch of limited sneakers and freebies just by filling out some forms. Assuming their success rate doesn't change, you now get that same feature for a lower cost, which means in theory, your return on investment for the slots will go up. So their feature score will be a 9.5 out of 10. And my personal overall rating goes up from an 8 to a 9.4. There you have it. Overall, I am very proud of all of the groups that had involuntarily participated in my reviews. But my word should not be the end all be all. If you've had any experience in any of these groups, please let me know your genuine actual thoughts below. And again, if you want to join any of them, click on the link in the description. That concludes this video. Hope you guys have a good day and hope you guys are successful in all of your botting, business, reselling ventures.